All right, the kids are indeed asleep. Let's talk opening day and the Blue Jays. Dustin, here on Thursday, March 30th, opening day for the Jays. Massive win. I don't know. I'm pretty hyped, a lot more than I was earlier today. Let's talk a bit about this game today, and we're going to talk a bit about our kind of preview for the season. But since we've already had one game in the books, um, tell me, tell me what your thoughts were on today.
Well, yeah, as you said, it was a massive win. I love to win these games. You know, I told you through text I had to take some Tums here in the eighth inning because the Jays were making me nervous. But that back and forth, it's exciting baseball, and that's why we watch it.
Well, I thought what was interesting is, even when, you like in baseball, even if you make the right move, you bring in the pitcher with the best matchups against, lefties or whatever, and like
Right.
sometimes it just blows up in your face, right? Tim Mesa gets brought in for two lefties, and he doesn't get either out. And with the new rule, a pitcher has to face three batters. He had to face a third batter, and so a righty that he wasn't very comfortable with. And then in the eighth inning, Yimi Garcia, he's been promoted to the kind of a setup man role. Pitched really well last year, had a good spring, and like total like it wasn't good either, right? But when you have bats like the Jays have, it gets you out of problems.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was going to be a tough test for the Jays to start the season. The Cardinals are a good team. I like to think them, uh, very much like the Jays in a lot of ways. Big bats. That lineup is a top to bottom, just like the Jays, a big hitting team, and we saw it. This was a slugfest, start to finish. Almost, I think every inning except for the fifth had a run scored.
Yes.
Yeah, crazy game.
Well, I we'll see how the next two games play out. Like we're gonna do a series wrap on this particular opening series this weekend, but we'll see how the next two games play out because I do think that there could be a little bit of opening day. There's some like bonkers results that happen on opening day that don't always make sense. Alec
Yeah,
Manoa had a very un-Alec Manoa game, but again, it's the first game of the season, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see how the next two games play out, and if the Jays can get a win out of this series, I think that's a good sign, an early good sign to start the season. But let's um let's jump back. All the excitement of the first game. Uh, spring is here. Spring has arrived since we last talked. But let's talk about spring training and um, it seemed kind of like a no news is good news situation for the Jays. But like, tell me a bit about what you noticed throughout the spring.
yeah, you're exactly right. Spring training was kind of boring, but that's good. I mean, you want that. Um, there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, a lot of times in the past, you see the Blue Jays. Um, there's a lot of roster spot kind of races. Who's going to make,
Yes,
that second base position? Who's going to be in the pen? A lot of question marks about what this final team's going to look like. But
which
there was
but
a whole lot
which
of
it
that
kind of
this
develops.
year.
It kind of develops excitement, kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? But those are what that actually is uncertainty, and that's probably a sign of a team that's maybe not an elite team, right?
Exactly. It just means you're not that good, right? When you got a team like the Jays where every roster spot there's somebody there that's, definitely going to make the team, that means this team top to bottom is just good. And I think another thing it says is that there's a lot of depth on this team. I mean, the only real question mark about, the roster was that last spot. I think coming down to the wire was between the guy who made it, Luke's,
Yeah, Luke's, yeah,
or Lucas, and you know,
Luke's, yes.
yeah. So that's a bench bat. He's going to be the fourth outfielder. I think I saw some news about him. He's been kind of a struggling in the minors for a long time. I think he had a good spring last year for the Jays, but didn't make the team. He was the last one cut last year, so kind of a little bit of a storybook spring for him, and he made the team, so it's good for him. He scored a run. I think he was a pinch runner here today. So good for him and good to see that. But like I said, it's just, no news is good news. Luckily, also, we haven't had any injuries. I mean, I know Vladdy had, that knee thing that bugged him for a little bit, but it didn't seem like a big deal. Probably if that was a mid-season thing, he probably would have played through it or maybe DH through it or something like that. But um, that's another good thing. I mean, we see teams like the Yankees. I think they've lost 3 out of their 5 starting pitcher rotation hopefuls, and the Blue Jays have like escaped with almost nothing. I think the Vladdy thing, and then there was Mitch White had a injury that went down for a little bit here, but it again, no news is good news. Everyone knows what their job is, and I think everyone just used it as a tune-up, and we were running into the regular season on a good foot here with the win today, and I think this is a really hopeful sign for the season.
Well, from everything that I saw, the focus is on attention to detail, and we did kind of touch on that before on our previous episode. But that's really what is being emphasized by John Schneider and his staff is that the attention to detail, everything, cleaning things up a little bit, and
Yeah,
I think we saw a bit of that today. And today, base running was like much improved. I thought, outfield, I don't know if the outfield really had to make a lot of plays, but there were a few times where you could see, this guy in particular, the play I was thinking about was Varsho, where he's looking to like fire to third. He's like, wait a minute, I need to keep this guy at first, and
right.
like that's a spur of the moment decision, and I don't think Goriel or Teoscar are they just weren't elite level defenders, and I think that's been improved. But the one I guess spot that we didn't really know at the I guess at the time of our last recording was who was going to play at second and or at least start at second, and we've now got our answer. Whit Merrifield is our starting second baseman. So between him and Bo Bichette, I understand that we have basically out of the 4 of the last 5 seasons, the player with the most hits in the league is on our squad. Let's roll actually into let's dive a little bit deeper into this team itself. So why don't we start with the rotation and a little bit of maybe what the player maybe their ceiling or what they could achieve this season and versus maybe what would equal a disappointing season. So why don't you start with the rotation, and then I'll maybe jump in with a few thoughts.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it last episode, but you know, I think we have a solid 1, 2, 3 with Manoah, Gaussman, Chris Bass. So that's an excellent top 1, 2, 3. And the real question marks here are going to be Jose Barrios and Yusei Kikuchi. So both these guys had disappointing seasons last year. If they can, if both of these, like if I think Kikuchi has kind of a 4.25, kind of 4.5 ERA in that range, and Jose Barrios can get back sub 4 ERA, which like he's proven every year before last year, he's had a really good, consistent, sub 4 ERA seasons. I think that's the ceiling. If those two guys can get to that mark, we know Alek Manoah is going to be good. I think Kevin Gausman is going to have a great season. I mean, just looking at the way he's pitching this spring, and he's just on it. Last year he had a lot of bad luck, so
What
he,
what are
I
your What are your thoughts on Manoa starting our opening day starter versus Gosman?
I mean, the opening day starter thing is like a- I think it's really, rewarding the pitcher who did the best on the team last year. So that's the way I've seen it. That's what a lot of people say. I think that's right. I think Manoa deserved it. He had a really good season last year. So I'm not upset about that, or I don't think Gosman would even be upset about that. So I think that's a good move. Um, but again, like I said, I think Gosman's going to be the better pitcher this year. And that would be my prediction. He's going to
Okay, well,
probably sniff
so
the Cy Young.
okay, well, this is because when we talked pre-show about kind of like what would what would be a successful, I guess, season, and let's go play like pitcher by pitcher. I think Manoa was in he was in the running for the Cy Young last year, was he not?
Yeah, he got a vote or two, I think. I don't know the exact
So
numbers, but he was definitely voted
so
for.
I think really, if he's to even to get even better, I think he challenges or makes even a step towards um, that Cy Young award. I think a disappointing season for him would essentially be a sophomore slump. Now, this technically
Right.
is his third season with the Jays, but the first season was a partial season,
We
so
don't
I'm gonna
count
say this.
2021. We don't count that.
Yeah, I don't count. So,
That's
so
a ghost
there's
season.
I think the floor for him could be, we could possibly see a sophomore slump, but I don't know. He's got a lively arm, right? And I think uh, today he struggled a little bit with location, but if he can figure that out and his mechanics, I think we probably have another good season. Now, Gosman, um, I was looking through his kind of his numbers over the past three few years. I think it's like a successful, like extremely successful season for Gosman would be a sub three ERA and 200 innings pitched, right? And it seems like you went a step further and say he would possibly challenge for a Cy Young.
I think so. Yeah, I think just I got the gut feeling that he's gonna really compete there. And last year there's a stat I don't know if you know, but there's a stat called BABIP, batting average on balls in play. And this is a stat that for pitchers especially, a lot of people kind of liken it to an indication of good and bad luck, right? How many
Mm-hmm.
balls when they're hit in play actually go down for a hit or not? Gosman was, I think, the bottom, like the worst in the league for batting average on balls in play. It has the highest batting average on balls in play, and like I said, especially for pitchers, that tells you that he probably had a lot of bad luck, a lot of bloops landing, a lot of somebody like him who's just a really good pitcher. His splitter is really hard to hit. Like that's not something that is indicative of like a poor performance. So I think that's just some bad luck. And, if that kind of normalizes, uh, he's going to be back to the old Gosman. And I think even better, I think he's going to really shine this
Well,
year.
we can keep an eye on that one and see, check in through the season, see how he's doing in terms of that. Now, Chris Bassett, I I don't know, his ceiling and his floor. I really don't know because I haven't really watched much of him on his previous teams. I think based on his historical numbers, I think if he appears in 30 games, successful and a sub 3.5 ERA, I think would be a quite a successful year for him. Now, Barrios, um, your numbers were bang on. I think if he has a sub 4 ERA, which might be tough, and 15 wins, that would be a big year for him. But who
That's
knows?
not out
After
of the,
last year,
that's, well, that's
it's
not
not
out
out
of
of the
the
question. It's not out of the
question for
question at all.
him. He's
No.
had a 3.5 ERA pretty consistently every year except for last year. So,
Yeah.
that's definitely doable. And, he didn't have a great showing in the WBC this year. He hasn't had a really great spring, so we'll see. But I think he can find it. I think he can come back.
Yeah, and with the improved defense behind him, maybe there's a few wins in there as well.
True.
Now Kikuchi, obviously the fifth starter in this rotation. I think for him to be deemed a success, sub 5 ERA is probably what we're looking at. And he's never. I don't think he's ever done this before. But if we could get scratch 10 wins out of them, that would be a deemed a big time success. Now, a lot of these numbers that I'm throwing out here are somewhat hopes, right? Like we don't, not everything is probably going to work out as we think. Gosman could have a really good season, and Kikuchi could be, dropped from the rotation for all we know, right? But I think if he could have a sub 5 ERA, then he's probably, pushing upwards of, he's never got 10 wins, but if he could get 10 wins, I think it'd be a highly successful season. So
Yeah,
now,
he's got like all the stuff. He's got a lot of promise. He's a lefty, throws 96, 97. He's got a pretty good slider. So he's got the stuff, the potential. It's all there. But I think maybe there's a little bit of a mental thing, that a mental block that he's had to push past. And I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how maybe the pitch clock is going to help him, right? He's got to just do things so quickly that you
mhm,
know
you don't have
maybe he just doesn't think as much. He just gets his sign and goes, and then maybe that's going to help him. And he's had a good spring so far, so hopefully he can turn that into a good regular season, and we'll be laughing if that happens.
now the bullpen. We talked about picking up Swanson. Um, where in terms of like what kind of I guess maybe metrics are we going to be looking at to kind of give an idea if this is a successful season for this group of guys?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the game today, I think we saw kind of the floor of what the bad looks like. If we're talking about the good and the bad here, this
Hmm.
today's game was kind of the bad for the bullpen. As you mentioned earlier in the top of the episode, Tim Meza is the only lefty out of that pen. He's there to get out lefties. He can do that, but if he doesn't, you know, then he's got to sit there and face Nolan Arenado and Goldschmidt, and give up a hit, and it, it- you know, I think this pen has a lot of depth. There was a lot of um, additions. We see, Eric Swanson, as you mentioned, Chad Green's on the IL, and he might come in later. We talked about last episode about Nate Pearson. I think sometime during the season he's going to come up and help out. He can throw well. We have a couple other guys that can get out lefties. I know Adam Simber's pretty good getting out lefties, and I think Anthony Bass can get out some lefties. So we have some right-handed pitchers that can do that. But we just
Swanson's really good at facing lefties as well. So I
yeah
think, well, this is
he's
the
good at
only.
having.
I think you have some guys that are even though they're righties can still get out some lefty bats.
Yeah, I think just these guys need to do their job and really just trust their stuff. I think, I mean, we saw Romano, he's lights out. Obviously, he had a great uh, close here today. Um, I think Yimi Garcia, he we saw some bad from him today, but I think he's probably like the second best in this bullpen, and hopefully he can you know really just do what he needs to do in terms of throwing strikes and getting that weak contact that we know he can do. So it's hard to read this bullpen. Like I said, I think the strength of the bullpen overall is the depth. There's a lot of guys that didn't make the team that are in the AAA this right now that you know we know bullpens, they cycle through and they come up and they come down. And I think the Blue Jays philosophy has been, let's do what we can to mix and match, find guys who have success, and go with them. And I think this bullpen will even out, and we'll be okay. And with the defense behind them, we should be better at preventing runs, and we won't have games like today um, too often.
I'm thinking that today was an aberration. I don't think this is going to be kind of the norm. And I
No,
do expect throughout the season that there to be a lot of changes. I don't think and while I hope that the Jay starter isn't going to regularly go 3 1/3 innings, right? So
right.
I don't think that was expected either. But then again, I'm pretty sure the St. Louis starter with the same distance. So it was one of those
Exactly.
games.
And like I said, the Cardinals are a good team. We often forget about like there's another team on the other side of the ball, and they're good. Their hitters, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Nootbaar. I mean, talk about it. This St. Louis lineup is like great. So, there's no shame in beating them 10-9. I mean, that's a great win.
I definitely thought so. Let's talk about just the lineup that I think there's a lot of names that everybody knows and is pretty familiar with. Why don't you start with the top of the order, George Springer? He had
Yeah,
some day today.
I know him and uh, Bo Bichette had a great day today. I think Springer went what 5 for 6.
5 for 6.
A couple of bloops in there, a little lucky bloops, but I mean, you put the bat on the ball and you use the whole field, and that's what happens. I think he's a quintessential leadoff guy, and we're gonna be lucky if he can stay healthy this year and give us that kind of performance all
Well,
year. This team's gonna be
what
amazing.
I'm hoping for with Springer is really the move to right field that we just see him in the lineup more, so he has more of an opportunity to do what he was doing today. Like obviously he's not going to 5 for 6 is probably not going to happen again this season, but the fact that he's in not in center field anymore, I think is it's just going to give him the opportunity to get more at bats. But let's talk about Bo. And I haven't been on Twitter, nor will I go on, but I'm sure after that error in early on, I'm sure Twitter probably was lighting up over his defensive abilities. But he's also the player that comes back and the next half inning instantly makes up for it as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's just got a great eye at the plate and a great bat. It makes up for a lot of the mental mistakes or errors in the field. You know, I was a little bit disappointed with him today. I think he had at least two plays, the one error and then another
Yeah,
play where he where
Vladdy
he
bailed
kind
him
of,
out.
yeah, where he got lucky. But that's tough to see. I love Bo Bichette. I think he's probably the best player on this team, and I want to see him succeed in defense and
Well,
and be just that all around player. So I hope he can figure it out.
well, I think what very well could happen too, and is he's gonna see that everybody's getting better around him, right?
Mm.
He's gonna see. He looks over his left shoulder, and who's he? He's got Kevin Kiermaier. His right shoulder, he's got Dalton Varsho, right? And
Right.
you know, you got guys that are going all out in the field behind you. You might feel a little burn, on the back of your neck where if you're starting to throw overthrows and balls in the
Yeah.
dirt. So I imagine there'll probably be some internal motivation in this team for him to just get better on his own, right? And
There's
and
probably
we
no there's probably no one on Twitter that's harder on Bo Bichette than he is on himself. He's a
probably you know
motivated guy. You know.
although there's some real buffoons on Twiter, so I don't know
Oh,
about
true.
that. But so moving on to Vladdy, he didn't have in terms of the last few years. I think his 2022 was definitely not a standout. His 2021 was absolutely fantastic, and if we can get anywhere near close to what his performance in 2021, which he was, I believe he was like a runner-up for AL MVP that year.
Yeah.
I think if we get anything close to that, I think we're gonna be doing quite well. Dalton Varsho, he seems like he can kind of do a little bit of everything. That Like, is he the old school five tool player?
Marshall, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he can. He's got a good baseball brain, I guess you would say. He's got, he's good on
Well,
the base
his
pass.
dad was a major leaguer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's another second generation ball player.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, for sure, he's kind of a well-rounded guy. I think he came up as a catcher, so you know they say the catchers are kind of those generals of the baseball field. You, you know, playing behind the plate like that, you see the whole field. You kind of get a feel for what needs to happen at any moment. So that makes him a great left fielder, as you mentioned earlier. He made a good kind of play in the outfield to keep a double play intact, and he's just got that kind of brain, in the field, on the base pass, and he hit 27 home runs last year. I think he can do that again. Hitting in the AL East and in these ballparks are very hitter friendly. So I think he can really put on a show and be somebody's. I think he's going to be a sneaky kind of favorite kind of guy, like one of those guys that everybody loves.
Well, in terms of the next spot in the lineup, like I have one name written down, but really we should talk about two, which are Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen.
Mm.
'Cause, they seems like they're going to essentially be platooning back there, which I think both are quite good options on any day.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Kirk played today because Manoah likes to throw to him. These guys,
He's his personal catcher, Dustin.
exactly. So,
I need a
yeah,
personal catcher.
I think any team would count themselves lucky to have two catchers at this level. Um, I don't think we take a hit with either one in the lineup, and it's great to have somebody like Jansen on the bench, um, to be able to come in and take over if needed. So that's it's just great to have those two guys. I think we're really lucky.
The so next up will be Whit Merrifield. Uh, Kind of seems like he can do a little bit of everything. Uh, put balls into play. He's got a little speed in him as well. I definitely saw him. He's definitely, I think he's got a good baseball brain in him as well. And
Yeah.
he was working every pitcher, so he's already clued in that he knows that these pitchers only have two disengagements. So he's
Mhm.
trying to get throws over and throw them off and all of this. And so I think he just seems. I remember watching him on the Royals, not knowing that he was going to be traded to the Jays, and he kind of just seems like a professional. Just good. He's
Yeah.
just a good ball
No, I agree. I think his nickname in the Royals was Two Hit Wit. I think they loved him over there, and I think similar to Varsho, he's going to be kind of somebody that this fan base is going to learn to love. He just does a lot of little things well. He's going to be a lot of time in the second base spot. He's going to see some time in the outfield. I think talking about him, we can also talk about Kevin Biggio and Espinal, sort of those three. I mean, like if you could take those three and jam them into like one
player.
super ball player, like he would probably be a perennial all-star. So, they all do a lot of different things very well. There's a lot of options that the Blue Jays have because of that bench. Um, and, I think we're going to see, um, it's hard to explain, but we're going to see the Blue Jays have a lot of different lineups. A lot of
Hmm.
teams, they just have the
Definitely.
same lineups that they run out there. The Blue Jays are going to have probably one of the higher kind of, like if you had to like count up the number of different lineup constructions over the season, they're probably going to be at the top of that. And not because they have a lot of injuries and they needed to have differences and they brought but because they have just such a deep bench and a lot of different, Swiss Army knife kind of players like Merrifield, like Biggio. So I mean that's just another benefit this team's going to see.
So we have Brandon Belt. He's kind of slated to be a DH. Also, will spell Vladdy at first base. I think there's we know him from his time with the Giants, but he's coming off a pretty decent injury, and so I
Mhm.
think we'll see what he offers. I'm hoping he had a lot of swings and misses today, but he also had a double uh, towards the end of the game as well. So
Yeah, I mean
um,
he's that kind of guy. He's a what do they call it? Three true outcomes or whatever. So uh, he'll hit a home run, he'll strike out or walk or something. So but I think he's going to be a good addition as well. He'll be able to spell Vladdy at first, and you know, uh,
well, and he's
you
an
know
experienced ball player as well.
that
So
too. Yeah, he's going to provide some. I think he won a World Series with the Giants, so he's got that kind of experience as well that'll help this team, in the playoffs maybe.
Kevin Kiermaier, he made a catch today, and it was like a sliding catch, and he just made it seem so routine.
Oh
And
yeah,
these are the kind of players that I like. That they're so elite that they make these nice catches just look very comfortable, right? And he he seems like he's going to be the not the number nine hitter, but he's got a bit of speed, and he seems like he put we can put the ball in play as well. But uh, you have any you have any final thoughts on him before we move on to maybe some predictions?
well, only that I mean, I agree with you. I think these kinds of players that they make the tough outs look easy, and sometimes it's hard to appreciate. But I mean, we know what this guy can do defensively from his time in Tampa Bay and how he's hurt, our broken our hearts with a lot of his catches. So hopefully we see a lot more of that. He got 2 hits today, so that's good too. So
Now, the one item that's different this year is the balance. The balance. Basically, they balance the schedule a little bit, and I think this is actually something that I think benefits the Jays in particular, but all AL East teams. Um, so we have 13 games against division rivals, so that's down from 19. 44 games against other AL teams, down from 46. And basically, that leaves 26 games, which are rebalanced into interleague games. So every team, I think for the first time in the history of the majors, every team will face every team at least once. And I think uh, since the Jays elected to stay in the AL East, many years ago and not move to the Central, I think that attendance wise that probably helped them, but I think results wise probably hurt them. And playing, the Yankees less. We won't talk about the Red Sox because they're absolute like dog shit at the moment. I was listening to a podcast where they're like, "What is going on in Boston?" And nobody had any answer. Like nobody knows what's going on, but
yeah.
they are utter dog shit, and at least comparatively to what they were. But there is a lot of heavyweights in the AL East that I think we're just gonna have less games against, and less games against the especially the Yankees. Probably a good thing because they're quite good year in year out.
Well, if you think about it, there's a number of teams that are on the NL in the basement that the Jays didn't play last year. I think the
Mm-hmm.
Nationals we didn't have any games against. I think
Sorry,
I don't think we
speaking
played.
like they're terrible apparently. Like
Yeah,
they're gonna
exactly. The Reds, I think the D-backs, the Rockies, these are teams that the Blue Jays didn't have a game against last year. And so like there's probably 4 or 5 of those teams. So if you take those four, you have a 3-game series against each of those. That's 12 games. that they're going to have against, garbage teams that they would
Mhm.
have last year had against AL East rivals. So, I mean, yeah, maybe that's also true for the Yankees and for the Rays. But I think definitely we're going to see a lot more opportunities for some wins there that we didn't have last year.
Well, and now that the National League has a designated hitter, there's no, it's not kind of like going to a foreign country.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go into some final predictions before we wrap this up. Uh, so the Jays, the last two seasons, they've had 90 wins. So we had 91 in 2021. We had a one game improvement last year to 90. So they were 92 and 70. Dustin, take me through how many wins they're going to get, how they're going to do in the division, and how this season ends.
Okay. So we talked a lot about the different changes that are happening, the balanced schedule. I think the improved defense that this team has. A little bit, we didn't talk about the changes to the stadium, but there are some changes that they say are going to
Future, we'll,
be.
we'll future
Yeah, we'll
episode
talk
that one.
about those in the future, but they say that's going to kind of be neutral, but I don't know if I believe it. We'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. But I think for all those reasons, the Jays are going to increase their wins here. I'm predicting 95. That's, I think 94 to 96 is where I'm thinking. So I'm going to come right down the middle. I think we're a 95 win team. And we're going to be at the top of the division. We're taking the division. It's going to be tight. I was looking at the schedule. I think the last 2 weeks of the season, the Blue Jays, the Yankees, and the Rays, they all play each other a lot in those last 2 weeks. So it's going to be an exciting final 2 weeks. But I'm saying the Blue Jays are going to come out on top. I don't think the Yankees are going to have the kind of season they had last year. I don't think Judge is going to. That was a historic season, and their lineup, other than Judge, is not great. Their uh, their rotation right now is in shambles. I mean, not to take anything away, the Yankees are going to be good, but you know, yeah, I think we're taking the division, and we're
So
winning at
where's
least one series this year in the
okay?
playoffs.
So we'll split this into two. Okay, so what do you think will happen, and what do you deem to be a successful season in the playoffs? I mean, like because we've already assumed you're saying they're winning the division. What are they doing in the playoffs? What do you think, and what do you think? Like basically, what's the minimum here that this season is deemed a success?
I mean, a success is winning a series, at least the one, and if they if they win the division, then that means they're going to get to the AL championship series. I think getting to the AL championship, that's a success. I think they're going to the World Series. I'm not so bold as to predict they're going to win it all. It's really hard to do that. You have to be super hot in April, but the way this team is constructed, they can do it, and so I'm hopeful that they can get to the World Series. My heart is saying let's win it all this year. This is the year, but a success, they got to win it. They got to win in the playoffs. They got to advance one round.
Okay, so you're saying they're gonna make the World Series.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Dustin predictions: 95 wins. They win the division, and They win the pennant. That's basically what Dustin's predicting. All right. My predictions now. I had no. I wasn't. I didn't actually think about this before. So this is somewhat on a whim. I'm saying that they. I think they win the division too. I for all of the reasons you mentioned with the Yankees, especially their starting rotation. Don't think it's as strong as ours at all. I think I think we get 100 wins. I don't know if that's ever happened in club history. I'd have to go back, but I think we get 100 wins. And for the
Oof.
last question of how far they go, I think they go to the championship series. I see if if somehow the Astros maybe get eliminated or something happens with them, I can see them making the World Series. If the Astros are in the championship series, I see them losing to the Astros. And my basically what will deem to be what I will deem to be a successful season is to win a series. I agree with you 100% there. I think this is what needs to happen, and if there's anything less than that, and this season will be deemed a failure,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And you know, for all of the I think the great players they've added, like you know, Atkins, Shapiro, and Schneider, they this team needs to win a series, and especially after what happened last year and everything like that. But I think we are out of time for this evening. The kids are still asleep, and but we will be back. I'm hoping for a series wrap for the Cardinals. So we'll see you Sunday, Dustin.
talk to you then, Al.
All right, have a good one.